everyone, welcome back to A Little More Inspired. My name is Blanca. Thank you so much for joining me today. On today's episode, I will be going through a video that I recently watched that really left me super inspired. It's by St. Thomas Aquinas, one of his translated sermons called Beware of the False. And before I dive into breaking down the sermon that he gave, Beware of the False, I first wanted to give a little bit of information on who St. Thomas Aquinas is, how I got introduced to him, why I felt so inspired by the sermon that I recently watched by him. If you're not Christian Catholic and you've never heard of the saints, that's okay. If you just want to stick around and learn about spirituality and just the lessons that I find very insightful, and please stick around and listen. You don't have to be Catholic to enjoy a good story and to find meaning in the teachings of people who have left an impact on this world. Think of saints as role models that believers look up to for inspiration, for direction, or for to learn from them and like the lives that they lived. And there's lots of saints, and each one has a specific virtue that can assist you in whatever it is that you are moving through in life. So I have been on my spiritual journey for a while now, and one thing that I have noticed throughout my whole process of looking for knowledge and looking for direction is that I always align with books that always seem to correlate to a lesson that I'm learning, or a wound that I'm healing, or anything that like it is helping me move forward. And I feel like the saints recently have been coming into my life in a very similar way. When I first moved back to DC, I was trying to understand like my internal healthy masculinity and my relationship with work. Saint Joseph came into my life, and I started learning about him and his virtues. And about him, he was like an expander because he helped me evolve in areas that I felt I was lacking in. And St. Thomas Aquinas came in a very similar way. And St. Thomas Aquinas was an Italian Dominican friar. He was a theologian and a philosopher. He was widely regarded as one of the most influential thinkers in the history of Christianity. He is a doctor of the church and is often called the angelic doctor due to his deep insight into theological and philosophical matters. St. Thomas is the patron saint of schools and education and students and learning and knowledge. I was so fascinated by what I was learning about him. He lived during the medieval times. During that period in Christian history, there was a big division between faith and reason. So kind of similar to where we are right now, honestly. Like logic and faith couldn't be intertwined, and they couldn't walk the same path. There were people who believed that you only needed logic and you only needed reason of the human mind involving our human nature. They believed that faith, it kind of interfered with reason. And then there were the people who just believed in faith and didn't feel the need to learn intellectually, and kind of similar to where we are now. I feel like for a lot of practicing Christians, there might be hesitation to say that we practice Christianity. There's this misconception that if you're Christian, you don't think for yourself and you don't have a mind on your own, and it's like a lack of education for people following the faith, especially here in the United States. The time that he was in kind of mirrors the time that we're in now. St. Thomas Aquinas believed that human reason and faith needed to go hand in hand to stay in balance, and that you needed both to evolve humanity. He believed that if God is the truth, then reason had to go hand in hand with faith because it complemented it, and knowledge and sciences and mathematics was a part of the universe as well, and you couldn't reject it. As this famous quote saying, "Grace builds on nature." God's grace does not destroy or override human nature, but rather perfects it and elevates it. He believed that reason and faith needed to go hand in hand because it was like our human intellect, and then there was an intellect above that, which is God's intellect, because he's the creator of the universe, of the planets, of everything. Yeah, he was just a really famous thinker and philosopher, and there's a lot of people that you don't have to be a Christian to really like his work, like if you're just into philosophy, then he's adored down that path. But if you also love theology, he's adored down that path. Was inspired a lot by Aristotle and Plato, contemplated topics like the existence of God and ethics and the nature of the soul. And he's most famous for his Summa Theologicas, his comprehensive exploration of Christian doctrine. He developed the 5 ways of logical arguments for the existence of God based on reason and observation. Like, the more that I learned about him, I was like so fascinated. I saw that he was canonized as a saint on July 18, 1323, and I was like, that's literally my birthday. I was born on July 18, and I was like, it felt very aligned. Like, he was like somebody that I needed to learn from. So yeah, I got his biography books and learned about his life, and I'm like totally obsessed right now. Summas are basically encyclopedias on spiritual life. It was obviously during the medieval times, so all of his writing is in Latin. So there's only translations of his summas. Summas are actually kind of expensive, and they're like, there's lots of them. It's like a set of encyclopedias of spirituality. And so I actually ended up getting 2 different versions of interpretations of the Summa. So like, I got this one, the Summa of the Summa. I haven't started it yet. And then I got this one, the shorter Summa, and they're both by different authors. And I just wanted to have options to see the different interpretations of different authors. I haven't gone into those yet because I want to be really immersed in what it is that I'm learning and probably create a lot of content from what it is that I learn in these. That's how I got to know St. Thomas Aquinas. I'm very happy that he's come into my life, and I have been just really fascinated by his desire to build a bridge between reason and faith, and his desire to learn. And he believed that everybody should seek knowledge, and like the whole purpose of all of his writings were that back in that time, if you were an intellectual, it was only very few elite people that got to learn a lot and like go to school, and it wasn't something that was really accessible to regular schmegular people like me and you. And he wrote the Summas as a way to be able to explain hard questions and he explained it in a way that everyday people could understand it as well. Like, you didn't have to be intellectual to dive into these deeper topics. So yeah, I think that he's just like a really cool saint that has come into my life, and I'm very grateful. Why I wanted to dive into his sermon on Beware of the False. Obviously, I am creating these YouTube videos and writing on in my blog, and I noticed that even though I enjoy so much the process of creating, this is my favorite part when I'm in my room creating and learning. I love doing this, and I feel genuinely from bottom of my heart that I want to do it to be helpful to others. Every time that I have posted, I'm always left with a lot of anxiety. You know, I don't like how I feel every time that I let people know that I created something. How do I move past this feeling of vulnerability? And watching like a spiritual video, and then I saw this icon of like St. Thomas Aquinas, Beware of the False. Like a little light bulb went up. Oh, what is he talking about? I started to feel really moved by the messages of his translated sermon. And the sermon relates so much to just apply it to everyday things, but it really helped me look for my why on why it is that I'm creating. I feel like could be applied to anyone that is listening. In the first part of the sermon, which I've linked in the bio for you to see, to go check it out on your own, he goes through what a prophet is, and you can tell somebody is actually being divinely guided. For today, I'm just going to be going through things of how to tell when you're dealing with somebody who isn't genuine or authentic, or a false teacher or a false leader, because we are dealing with that every day today. I feel like a lot of what he calls a wolf in sheep's clothing reminds me of the concepts of narcissist, or people who just come into our lives and create havoc and try to steal our light. Talks about the 3 types of people that you're going to meet in your lifetime. There are the shepherds, who are the true authentic leaders, or the true authentic people that come into our life to teach us and guide us and set us on the right path. There's the Hirelings or the hirelings who come to just seek to gain something from you. They're the ones who come to use you, not necessarily to destroy you, but want to gain something out of you. And I feel like in modern times, like most people are hirelings. We live in a capitalistic society, kind of like survival of the fittest ingrained in us to see what you can gain out of people because everybody is in like a competition or in a race to win God knows what. Third type of person, which is the wolves, who are here to steal from you and destroy the sheep. They are the people who are here to just create complete havoc in your life. It says that hirelings must be endured, wolves must be avoided and fleed, and shepherds must be loved. What are the differences between a shepherd, a wolf, and a hireling? So a shepherd intends to benefit the sheep. They come to guide the sheep. Those guiding lights that come into our life, those guiding leaders that are here to set us in the right path. Today is Martin Luther King. Like, he's a shepherd. He was like a leader of great wisdom and great knowledge and believed in love and peace. There's the wolves in sheep's clothing that tend to thieve and destroy the sheep. There are the hirelings who seek their own gain from the sheep, only works for material gain. Maybe you're somebody who has been tricked by people or you've been damaged. Felt like described a lot of narcissistic people and learning discernment between like genuine people and people who don't mean you well. On to explain what a false prophet is, or false teachers or pretenders. He has 4 qualities that people who are fakes or pretenders have. Number 1 is in their teaching. Number 2 is in the inspiration. Number 3 is in the intention, and number 4 is in the life that they live. I think that the reason why so many Christians get a bad rep is because we're not encouraged to think for ourselves, encouraged to what to think. And I don't think that good teachers or good leaders or a good society is when you don't teach people how to critically think. Your spiritual practice or your spiritual leaders or anybody that you're following isn't encouraging you to come to your own conclusions through reason and pondering and reflecting and accountability and learning and just following what they say, then I don't think that that's like a good spiritual path because it leaves you vulnerable to brainwash. That's why I really liked the sermon because it made me reflect on my intentions behind creating, but then it also made me reflect on just the way that I consume knowledge or the people that I pedestalize or the people that I follow. What are my reasonings for following those people, and are they guiding me to goodness? And also, are they teaching me to think for myself, or are they teaching me to follow them blindly without any thought? So before I jump in, I realized while I was editing that I wanted to add the beginning quote that St. Thomas jumps into his sermon with. I really feel like this quote really builds that bridge between his whole entire purpose in his teachings, which was to build a bridge between reason and faith. What I think that this quote means is that you might have the mental intention to want to be good, to follow faith, and to follow the rules of a book or a church or a religion, but what are your actual intentions behind that? And what are your leaders and your spiritual teachers and the people that you vote for and the friends and the people you follow? Are they guiding you to think for yourself, or are they guiding you to just follow what they say? I think that this quote really sums up the concepts of if you only have faith but don't seek knowledge and don't seek to learn and don't seek to expand your mind through other types of knowledge that isn't directly from the one particular thing that you believe, then you limit yourself from all of the things that you could learn. And anyone that teaches you that you don't need education or you don't need reason to grow as an individual is setting you up for failure. Because I think that when I was learning to heal, what really healed me the most was the fact that I was became a very curious person, that I seeked out knowledge, that I learned from all kinds of spiritual teachers, and that eventually it did lead me to where I am now. But I allowed myself to be open to different ways, different perspectives to see reality. Sometimes the way that one particular religion or spiritual leader or one teacher explains things might not be in the best way that you might internalize it and understand it. Like, for example, when I was learning about the concepts of suffering, I really learned what true suffering meant when I was learning about it through the Buddhist teachings. And now that I understand the concept of suffering, now I understand suffering in a different way while I read, Christian doctrine. And so what this quote is trying to say is that if you are trying to only go by your faith and not by reason, then that also leaves you open to doing bad things, because you're moving from a place of ignorance. Just like somebody who only moves through their five senses or their logic leaves room for losing empathy and leaning towards self-indulgence because of the lack of boundaries. I think that this is what this quote means to me, and I just thought that it's really beautiful and it's the perfect way to start the chat that we're going to have. So St. Thomas says, "The spirit desires against the flesh, and the flesh against the spirit. Yet sin arises from both. Sometimes sin stems from the weakness of the flesh, other times from the ignorance of the spirit. Let us cleanse ourselves from every impurity of both flesh and spirit. The spirit is indeed willing, but the flesh is weak. Sin of the spirit emerges from its ignorance, namely when the spirit is deceived. Therefore, we are strengthened by our reading, fortified against both sins, against the weakness of the flesh and the deception of the spirit." I hope that this quote just helps you open your eyes on why it's important to seek out knowledge and to seek out information and to continue to learn and to expand your mind, and to not just go by the things that people tell you and by the rules that other people tell you and by trying to force the right way of living on other people, because not even God forces us to follow him. He gives us freedom because love is freedom. That's what I think this quote means, and let's get into it. Thank you. We'll dive into the 4 false qualities of the fake teachers and the fakes. Number 1 is falseness of teaching. True, genuine leaders teach truth. Liars teach the wrong things. If anyone makes my words known, let him speak truth. People who are fake or false individuals who don't mean you well, they induce direction that leads to doom. And he goes on to say, what is stupid? Stupid is someone who speaks false things to please the people. They make false assumptions and false statements to be liked by the masses because in some way they want to profit off of or liking of them. Number 2 is in their false inspiration. He goes on to say that holy people are inspired truly by goodness and by God and by love and by the desire to genuinely help other individuals. True love is desire to bring other people up, right? Like goodness wants you to be brought up, not be pushed down. Their interest isn't just about them, it's about your interest as well. Those prophets are inspired by what they can gain out of you. God's interest is our interest. And he doesn't cause harm to others. He's peaceful. He gives us freedom and he allows us to do whatever it is that we want. He just asks for us to be obedient. He just lets us look at the consequences of just going by our own logic and follow the signs and your intuition. It will inspire you and give you direction on how to change your life in a way that you can find happiness within yourself. Number 3 is their intention. What is the true intention behind the teacher? Benefit of the people. Is it to genuinely be helpful to others and be of service? Or is it to profit off of people that don't have direction or can't think for themselves? And so that's why becoming conscious is really important, so that you can start to see the intentions behind why people do the things that they do. Someone who speaks to speak other than for the benefit of the people is a false teacher. They seek temporal gain, empty glory, what they can gain monetarily, attention, validation, and praise. 4 is in the falseness of life. They live a bad life, not a holy life. They don't live the way that they speak. And he goes on to say, beware of the ones in sheep's clothing, because those are the hypocrite. That's just like, especially now with like social media, I feel like I have fallen for illusions or the performances of goodness from people. Even like my own lack of awareness of my values. I think that before I used to fall into, oh, like they're really pretty, or on social media they look like they have a really good life. I would almost pedestalize them. There's a lot of people who pretend to be good or very disciplined lives online, or even leaders that we follow, liars, and most people don't think for themselves and they just follow things blindly. What I believe that St. Thomas Aquinas is trying to do in this sermon is really get people to think more and to be more observant. And so then he goes on to describe sheep. Sheep listen to that voice, that godly voice that we talked about in my last episode, live in imitation of Christ. And so genuine people who are good, trying to tap into that Christ conscious. They're trying to emulate the goodness of Christ. And you can tell who a genuine person is by 2 things: the virtues of their soul and the goods of their work. False sheep only look like that on the outside. True spirituals have an internal, deep life. Reaching out that we're not falling for the performances of goodness. Any of us can fall into that fakeness. I have also probably been fake for many times in my life when I didn't have a good understanding or clarity on my values, or when I was seeking out excessive validation, or didn't love myself fully, or didn't feel that wholeness. Even now that I have a very full life, that doesn't mean that my ego isn't going to need to be checked today and in the future. And that's why I really loved running into this sermon of St. Thomas Aquinas, because it helped me keep my ego in check. Like, what are my whys? The journey of goodness, it's like an everyday choice that we make every single day, and some days are going to be easier, some days are going to be harder. In our natural tendencies to move towards self-indulgence. He goes on to describe the virtues of sheep, or genuine, authentic, good people. He describes it as these garments that people wear, but it's like obviously these invisible garments. One of the garments is the garment of worship. You put this garment on every time you pray, the joy and thanksgiving that comes from worshiping God. Hypocrites put on the garment of worship for empty glory and gain. They pray out in the public or in the open. Out in the open isn't necessarily a place, but it's in the soul, in the spirit. It's what's in our hearts. He gives a quote saying, "The one who has his soul not with the people, but with God, pray in a hidden place." And what is forbidden? To have your soul aimed at being seen by people and not by God. So pray in secret, not in conformity with others. Basically what he's saying in the garment of worship is that there's people who pretenders, right? Like, how many times have we heard that the people who go to church are sometimes like the worst people, or the most conniving or ill-intentioned people? A lot of people go to church just to be seen as good. They claim that they follow Christian values, or that they're spirituals, or that they're one with the universe, but really they only do that to be perceived as good. Number 2 is the garment of righteousness. True, authentic spirituals don't do things to be seen or praised by people. Believers, good works, quality of living in a way that is morally right and acceptable, especially in the eyes of God. And that's something that we always have to ask ourselves. Like, I think that when I was feeling all of that anxiety of every time that I posted something, I felt like I really had to get my ego in check. And am I doing this because I want to be seen by others, or because I want to be genuinely helpful? Number 3 is the garment of penance. Don't act sad or put on a show every time you do something for God. Once you truly connect to that spirituality, it doesn't feel like something that is being forced upon you. It feels like something that fills you with so much energy that you want to do it. Do things with joy, or don't do them at all. And he goes on to say to don't be ostentatious. which means an excessive display is intended to attract attention, admiration, or even envy. Fake godly things is done to deceive others. It goes on to say to be content with moderate things, but also don't seek the low things or the poor quality things too much either. I really liked this section because to not just look for poor quality things, because fake seek glory in those things too. It's also the way the hypocrites pretend as well. Like you can seek out good things, but even much of anything isn't good for the spirit either. You know how like they say that modern day billionaires, like there's nothing ethical about them? Like amounts of people that have had to suffer to get those specific people to the status in monetary goods that they have. I really like that because it reminds me that, you know, you can like nice things and you can like want good quality things, but seeking the moderate life is the excess starting to affect my moral code kind of thing. Number 4 is the garment of innocence. I think that everybody has innocence to them until one day, you know, people come and they try to like corrupt your mind or they traumatize you or they affect you in a way that takes away that the innocence of like when you see a child and like they don't have like that fear yet in their heart, you know, or that hate in their heart. So the garment of innocence is bright and beautiful and it equals somebody who has strength and elegance. When innocence is gone, it brings shame. It was like the beginning of the split soul. Innocence of the heart, beautiful in appearance, but even more beautiful on the inside. Garment of innocence or innocence of the heart are people who are genuinely good-hearted. Like they glow from the inside out. They're beautiful on the outside because they radiate this light and this goodness. It's not a pretend. Like they're just as beautiful as they are on the outside. They're also like that on the inside, and that takes effort. He goes on to say, hypocrites only appear this way to gain temporal gains and honors. We haven't been taught genuine self-worth that comes from inside of us and from our relationship with the universe and with God. Been taught that validation comes from outside of us, and whenever we think that that wholeness comes from outside of us, then we're bound to do things or gain that wholeness that we're seeking. And so we're bound to do things that we aren't always proud of because of our desire to feel whole and validated and loved, which is what most people are seeking. And later he goes on to describe 3 types of people. Shepherds intend to benefit the sheep. So these are the people that come into your life that are genuine. They want to help you. They believe in you. It's not just about their benefit. They want to see you be your highest self. They're the people that come as positive teachers, the good friends, the good leaders. There's the wolves. They're dressed in sheep's clothing and they tend to want to steal from you, take your energy, and they tend to destroy the sheep. I think of them as narcissistic people. And then there's the Hirelings who seek their own gain. They don't necessarily seek to hurt you, but in their selfishness, they don't care what they have to do to gain things from the sheep. Only work for material reward. So these are like the people who are selfish. I feel like our world is filled with Hirelings. We want to look for the shepherds in our life. This is where I was saying, where I was just like, I feel like these messages are from the medieval times, but like you could apply this to just everyday life. Like I feel like I've encountered many wolves in my life and they literally just come destroy everything in their path because they're living in a lot of chaos. And or maybe we've been wolves at some point, or maybe we've been Hirelings. I don't think that can become like a shepherd too, you know, like I think that we're all redeemable if we decide to take radical accountability to change our lives. I do think that people can change, but I think it's very rare for people to change. I think that most people know that they're doing bad things, too trapped in their own selfish desires. I think it takes a lot of like humility, like sometimes deep rock bottoms for people to genuinely change their ways. Or we said in the last episode, some people don't change until like they literally are about to die. Why hypocrites are compared to wolves is because wolves disperse sheep. They deviate people from God's teachings. When a powerful, potentially malicious force is causing disruption and scattering a vulnerable group of people. Signifies less of unity, safety, or spiritual guidance within a community. So this is like similar to when narcissistic people or you're in a narcissistic relationship and they kind of try to isolate you. They do it because they know that they can siphon your energy most when you're in the most vulnerable place of being alone and not having any support. Those are bad people. They want to separate people. They don't want there to be unity because they're easier to control that way. Predatory individuals disrupt harmony within a group. Leaders that try to create division, try to make us feel that there can't be unity between different communities or that we always have to be like at odds for each other. Those are wolves, people who don't like peace. Sheep are typically innocent and dependent, easily led astray without guidance. This symbolizes people who may be naive or easily influenced. So we all have been sheep at some point. I feel like when I was at my weakest spiritually, that was when I was the most easily influenced and I went with whatever anybody told me. Us to become like a shepherd, you have to have like a strong moral code, you have to have integrity, you have to have knowledge, that way you learn how to think for yourself. Wolves represent danger, aggression, and malicious intent, symbolizing individuals or forces that exploit or harm others for their own gain. Wolves do not spare in any way. A person who would kill someone or hurt someone and not spare them if one coin could be gained is the definition of cruel. And in today's political time, I feel like most of these leaders are wolves. Like all they care about is money and they don't care about effects they're having on their sheep. They're supposed to be the shepherds guiding and leading us, but they don't care of like the consequences of their choices because all they care about is personal gain. Not just leaders, it can be anybody that comes into your life, that's just seeking to gain something out of you and doesn't care about the consequences of how it's going to affect you. People whose ambition is stronger than their morality. Hypocrites are like this. Remember, the life of the soul is more important than the life of the body. Hypocrites seduce souls in order to have followers and honors. So agree with this statement. I feel like my spiritual life is the most important thing to me. That is like the only place where I find true genuine wholeness now, and I don't really feel like people can really trick me anymore. I think that my discernment is like 10 out of 10 now, but it took a minute to get there. I had to go through a lot of hard lessons to not be deceived by people's performances of goodness. Hypocrites are like wolves because they persevere in their malice, unrelenting in their pursuit to take you down. So how are wolves detected? You will know them by their fruit. Many people are deceived because of their own lack of good judgment, because we confuse the clothes of wolves for their fruit. Hence, they will come to you in sheep's clothing. We fall for people's performances of goodness or order. And this is because we tend to be very simple-minded. We don't tend to look deeper into things and to be observant of people. We tend to just see what we want to see at times. That can be because what are we seeking when we're like trying to connect with people? Are we seeking validation? Are we seeking to fill a void? If you're always seeking people out of a lack, then that's how people can control you because they can pretend to fill a void that you think other people are going to like give you. When you're the easiest to manipulate because your wholeness isn't coming from deep within. People come and they see a vulnerable person who's insecure, who doesn't have any self-value, who doesn't have any self-respect, and they're going to trick you. You're seeing what you want to see, not the reality of people. The sheep of Christ should not hate their clothes just because wolves disguise themselves as them. There's going to be bad people in everything, in every community. I personally realize now that it's the war that we're fighting spiritually is between good and evil. And there's going to be people that infiltrate every community, and that's why it's important to be self-aware, to have discernment, to really see the heart of people and not just the things that we want to see the truth of people and not what we want to see of them. We start to make better decisions and walk away from any red flag. I just went through how you can detect if you have a wolf in your presence. 4 fruits that she produce are, number 1 is affection. They're heart-centered. They have a love of God and neighbor. They radiate love, joy, and peace. And hypocrites are after ambition. They love honors and status. I think that with the affection and the heart centered, I personally feel like if your spiritual practices aren't making you more loving and more joyful and more peaceful and more and softer, then you're probably not doing it right and you're probably using it to feed your own judgments and your own selfish ego. I think that the more you deepen your spiritual practice and it truly penetrates your soul and you let go of all of like the garbage that we've been taught, it starts to make you like lighter. I think you start to radiate love, joy, and peace because you're living in that state. That's why they say like those are like the highest vibrations. When you're still living in the lower vibration, doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It means that you just might have to, there's things that you still have to work through. I think that there's like a patience that we need to have during our spiritual journey or during our healing journey, is that it's taken me a really long time to get to where I am now. That joy and that love and that peace that I have. But that doesn't mean that I'm not strong or that I don't have boundaries or that I can say no or that I have standards in the ways that I want to be treated or the people that I want to be around. It being heart centered, that doesn't make you like a weak person. I think like now this is the strongest I've ever felt and this is the most confident I've ever felt because I feel full in my wholeness. I can walk away from anything that doesn't feel aligned. Just because you're living in your heart center, that doesn't equate to you being like a weak person. I think that I was the most weak when I was living in my mind and in my ego and in all of my insecurities. True change to get to this place. It's been, I don't even, maybe 6 or 7 years that I've been doing this kind of internal work. It wasn't an overnight thing. It's a slow process. Like true, real change takes time because you're letting go and you're also letting go and learning, letting go and learning. And anybody that promises you an overnight healing or an overnight change, they're lying to you because true, genuine change starts at like the core of your foundation, you know? And first you have to get all of that nasty stuff that's been inside of you, and then that new foundation starts to build slowly and surely as you learn, but then also apply the things that you're learning. Second thing that sheep produce is in their speech. It's described by our mouth. Good people say good things and speak good things. Actions align with their words. So, for example, a heart full of jealousy can't help but utter that from time to time. And out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So what he's trying to say is how you can tell you're amongst like somebody who isn't genuine or authentic is people tend to unconsciously project what is hiding inside of them, whether they realize it or not. Like eventually everybody's mask falls off and people can only pretend for so long. Eventually, like if you're filled with jealousy and envy, you're bound to make a statement that shows that that's hiding within you. But it's up to us as the sheep or as the people who are getting to know other people to catch those things and catch those little like, did they really just say that? Or that's kind of weird. A lot of the times, again, we don't take people for who they are. We see what we want to see and we don't take it seriously. Sometimes people show you who they are and we don't believe them because we think, well, I'm being good to them. They're not going to treat me like that. But how you do one thing is how you do everything. And people's character shows in the way that they speak of others, in the way that they bond in communication with others. That's what I think he means. Number 3, operation in work. In good people, there is good fruit. He talks about how hypocrites don't like to work hard. They just sell you the illusion of working hard. Like they perform that they're successful or that they're not honest. That's what he means. They show themselves as moderate, but when they have a chance to pursue their desires, they pursue them at the highest extent. They want to trick you to get what they want. So they are going to do whatever's in their power to siphon your goods and your resources in whichever way that they can. So these are the people that they don't care who they have to trample to get to their goal of either money or status or job. Like they're going to take it and they don't care about how it affects you. So he goes on to quote a person named Gregory and says, if any temptation of faith comes up, The savage mind of the wolf would immediately lay aside the habit of the sheepskin. Then he shows how much he would rage against the good ones. This, I would say, is like the example of a friend. They try to pretend that they're your friend and they try to get insight from you. But the moment that they get a chance to throw you under the bus, they will do that to get ahead of you. And that's when you'll see people's true colors, when they can no longer benefit from you or when you're no longer controllable. How fast do they throw you under the bus for you to die? And number 4 of the fruits of a sheep is that they have cleansed themselves out of ego, selfish desire, living in alignment with their spirit. They're living in alignment with goodness, and they're living alignment with the intention to be of service. We'll link St. Thomas Aquinas, Beware of the False, and the information so that you can listen to it yourself. But I just found it to be so insightful and deeply moving. It gave me an aha moment about my why of doing things and of looking for work and of finding mentors, even just creating this video. What is my reasoning behind it? Am I being a hypocrite, or am I being a Hirling, or am I being a shepherd? Took me a really long time to get out of a really dark place. I would love for other people to feel the fullness and love and joy and hope that I feel now. But it did take me a long time. Like, it was slow and painful at times. And there are times where I felt I'm never going to get to the mindset that I want to be in. And so changing so that we're not a wolf, so that we're not a Hirling, or so that we're not a weak sheep takes time, and it takes a lot of patience, and you're going to get there. I hope you found this video insightful, and I hope you feel a little more inspired. If you want to hear or view more content like this, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and like. If you want to connect in any kind of way, or if you have a different interpretation of Beware of the False, please let me know. I love to learn, and I'm always open to new perspectives. I'm learning with you guys every day as well. Like, everything that I create is coming from a place of learning. So yeah, guys, thank you so much. Bye.